Hi, I'm Captain Mission. Mission grows when trust grows. Wederly Aguiar highlights how transparency and accountability can strengthen confidence and stewardship.
Hello everyone. It's a privilege to join you today for this Mission in Motion event, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you. My name is Wederly and I serve as the Treasurer and CFO of the British Union Conference. And I'd like to begin by inviting you to pause and consider a word that carries incredible power in our churches. And that word is trust. Trust is more than a feeling, it's a foundation. It's the quiet confidence that members place in leadership, in decisions, and in systems that handle something sacred, the stewardship of God's resources. As we begin this conversation on transparency, on accountability in church finances, I want to start with Scripture, the foundation for everything we do. In 1 Corinthians 4, verse 2, the Apostle Paul reminds us, "Moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful." It's a short statement, and probably one that could be unpacked further in different ways. And for that reason, I like the version in the New International Version that expands slightly on the word steward by saying, "Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful." And really that's what stewardship is about. A steward is someone who has been entrusted with something that doesn't ultimately belong to them. In the church, we are stewards of the gospel, stewards of our communities, stewards of time, of talent, and of treasure. But when it comes to finances specifically, we're entrusted with something sacred. We are handling the tithes and offerings that members and friends give, not just out of habit, but out of conviction and sacrifice. It's not optional to be faithful. It's required. And faithfulness in stewardship is not only about balancing books or filing reports, it's about proving trustworthy, about building confidence in those we serve. So today, as we talk about building trust, we begin with this reminder. Stewardship and trust are not separate ideas. To be a steward is to have been given a trust, and to honour that trust is to walk faithfully with clarity, transparency, and accountability. And that's our calling, that's our challenge. So, as we explore this topic, let's start with something foundational. Why trust matters. In any organisation, whether it's a business, a charity, a church, trust is the invisible thread that holds everything together. But in the church, trust isn't just a practical necessity, it's a spiritual value. We're called to be stewards of God's resources. And that means more than just accuracy. It means accountability, it means clarity, it means that people who give should feel confident that their offerings are being handled with care, with wisdom, and with integrity. Trust matters because in an environment where trust exists, it enables mission. Trust reduces friction, trust empowers giving, trust grows through transparency. And so when members feel confident in how finances are handled, they're more likely to support, to engage, and to give joyfully. And trust matters because transparency builds connection, and then connection builds participation. Trust matters because we live in a world where institutions are increasingly questioned. The church must be a place where people say, "I know my contribution is respected. I know this community is accountable." And when trust is strong, decision-making becomes easier. Conflict is reduced, stewardship grows. And for this reason, trust is the currency of lasting relationships, including in the church. So we're not just talking about money. We're talking about leadership, about the spiritual responsibility of helping people see that their giving is part of something meaningful, and that their trust is well placed, and that's why trust matters. And that's why this important conversation is happening today. So as we explore how to build and sustain trust in finances, it's helpful to ground our thinking in insights drawn from both spiritual conviction and practical experience. And one of the most helpful frameworks I've encountered comes from a 2011 publication from the General Conference that was titled Transparency and Accountability, a Global Commitment of Seventh-day Adventist Church Leaders. And in this book, one of the articles was written by Elder Paul Douglas, who currently serves as Treasurer and CFO of the General Conference. And he wrote an article entitled Confidence Matters. And in it, he outlines a clear and compelling framework for building financial trust within the church. He identifies three essential interconnected elements: organisational control, organisational cultures, and organisational communication. Now, these three elements work like the legs of a three-legged stool. If one is missing or weak, trust becomes unstable. But when all three function well together, they support a system that is not only sound, but also inspiring. One that gives members confidence in how the church stewards its resources. So first, let's consider the organisational culture aspect of the model. Culture begins with the tone set by leadership. This tone communicates what we value, what we prioritise, what we tolerate. It shapes how freely people feel they can ask questions, how freely they feel they can report mistakes, and of course, celebrate good stewardship. When this tone reflects integrity, humility, and a commitment to transparency, it fosters an environment where trust can flourish. As stewards of God's resources, especially as leaders within the church, we are called to model biblical values, legal and ethical integrity, professional standards, and faithful adherence to denominational policies. A strong tone inspires effective training for those responsible for financial duties, helping build consistency, confidence, and alignment across all who manage church funds. And at the foundation are the daily transactions: counting offerings, recording income, expenses, reporting, approving expenditure. These visible actions of stewardship are only as strong as the culture supporting them. So when the tone is right, training is embedded, transactions are trusted. So next, let's look at the organisational controls. These are internal controls, financial controls, the backbone of trust. They ensure that transactions are accurate and complete. And there are different types of controls, but these often include some key elements like physical controls, such as locked cabinets, secure offering handling, authorizations and approval limits, so no one person can spend church funds unilaterally, segregation of duties, which separates financial responsibilities to reduce risk, management controls, including board oversight, regular financial reviews, and simple arithmetic and accounting controls like reconciling bank statements, verifying balances. But the point here is that each control matters. It matters individually, but together they create a system that protects not only money, but also the people handling it. Controls are not about suspicion, but about respect. Respecting the faithfulness and members of protecting the integrity of leadership. And finally, there's organisational communication. It's the glue holding it all together. Communication links every level of the church through leadership decisions, managerial oversight, ministry priorities, and the everyday financial processes that enable ministry. Those handling church finances are uniquely positioned to connect these layers. Good communication is clear, regular, and meaningful. Not necessarily sharing everything, but sharing enough to build understanding. This means plain language, visual summaries, and most importantly, linking financial information to mission outcomes. For example, instead of simply saying, "We received £4,500 in offerings," how about if we said instead, "Thanks to your faithful giving, we've supported children's ministries, kept the church warm this winter, funded evangelism." So when members see the impact of their giving, participation grows. Clear communication prevents misunderstandings and reinforces that finances are handled with integrity. And remember, silence breeds suspicion. It's transparency that builds trust. So together, these three critical elements, culture, controls, and communication, They create a powerful synergy that fosters trust, ensures accountability, and aligns church finances with mission. Church finance is often at the heart of this process. So let's embrace this role with confidence and purpose. So far we've talked about trust at the organisational level, culture, controls and communication, but now we shift the focus slightly from systems and structures to something more personal. How do we build trust as individuals? How do we build trust as leaders, as stewards? So this next slide isn't meant to be an exhaustive checklist. Instead, it's an invitation to reflect. A reminder that every action we take, no matter how big or how small, either strengthens or weakens the trust others place in us. Trust is built over time through character, consistency, and care. So let's look at some of these qualities that nurture trust in leadership. Value long-term relationships. Don't think in terms of transactions, think in terms of people. Stewardship is about more than balancing budgets, it's about walking faithfully with others over time. Be honest, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect you if they know you're being truthful. Honour your commitments. If you say you'll do something, follow through. If circumstances change, communicate. Reliability is a cornerstone of trust. Admit when you're wrong. No one expects perfection, but humility builds credibility. Owning mistakes shows strength, not weakness. And communicate effectively. Keep people informed, be clear, be timely, and kind in your updates, whether verbal or written. Be helpful. Sometimes building trust is as simple as offering support or taking the time to explain something that's unclear. Show people that you care. Ministry is personal. People respond when they feel seen, heard, and valued. Stand up for what's right. Even when it's uncomfortable, integrity earns respect, even if it costs popularity. Be transparent. This is at the heart of our message today. Open, honest, and mission-focused transparency builds a lasting foundation of trust. So as we reflect on these points, let's remember we build trust one interaction at a time. In the quiet conversations, in the careful explanations, in the examples we set. Because trust is not just about something we talk about, it's about something we live. So let's take a moment now to look at what I believe is one of the most important visuals in this entire presentation, and we can call it the trust matrix. This matrix helps us understand the relationship between actual trustworthiness and the perception of being trusted. On the horizontal axis, we have a scale from not trustworthy on the left to trustworthy on the right, and this represents reality, the actual quality of our financial practices, our records, our controls, our compliance, and integrity. On the vertical axis, we have a scale from not trusted at the bottom to trusted at the top. And this represents perception, how others in the church experience us, what they believe about our transparency and reliability of our financial management. And together, these axes form 4 quadrants, and each tells a different story. So just go with me through this story and just imagine in the bottom left, we find the worst case scenario, where the finance function maybe isn't trustworthy, but it's also not trusted. This is where there are no records and no reports. There's neither substance nor communication. This quadrant breeds suspicion, conflict, and disengagement. Then in the bottom right, we find the situation where the treasurer or the team is doing the right thing, keeping accurate records, but not communicating. This is trustworthy, but not trusted. Why? Because members can't see the evidence. They don't know what's happening, and in the absence of information, trust tends to shrink. Then in the top left, we have a dangerous zone, trusted but not trustworthy. This is where reports are shared, but they're based on poor records. It may look good on the surface, but underneath the foundations are shaky. This quadrant creates false confidence, and this can lead to disappointment, embarrassment, or even crisis where discrepancies emerge. Finally, in the top right quadrant, we reach the ideal, both trustworthy and trusted. This is where records are accurate, reports are shared willingly and clearly, members are informed, they're engaged and confident. Trust grows because both the substance and the perception align. So here's the challenge. Where are you today on this matrix? And what would it take to move you closer to that top right-hand corner, where stewardship is both faithful and trusted, and where confidence enables mission to thrive? So too often, finance is viewed narrowly, as a behind-the-scenes administrative task. But in reality, church finance is a strategic ministry that underpins every aspect of faithful stewardship and builds the foundation for trust. The graphic on the screen shows 4 key dimensions in this ministry. First, record keeping. It's the essential foundation. This is where accurate records are created, transactions are properly documented, and reports are based on sound data. Without this, no other financial function is reliable. It's not glamorous, but it's vital. Second, financial administration, overseeing financial operations. This includes paying bills on time, tracking budgets, ensuring compliance with policies. It's the steady, careful work that keeps the church functioning and supports every department's ability to serve. Third, financial advising, the interpretive role. This is where finance informs decision-making. Budgets, forecasts, financial implications, scenario planning, all this helps leadership teams make wise, informed decisions. And finally, strategic partnership, the highest expression of church finance. This is where resources are intentionally aligned with the church's mission and vision. Finance doesn't just follow ministry, it helps to lead it. And these 4 elements are not steps to outgrow, but rather dimensions to recognise and integrate. Strong record keeping and administration ensure credibility and stability. Financial advising brings wisdom and insights to strategic leadership discussions. These partnerships turn financial operations into missional alignment. And this slide helps us to see church finances not as a support service, but as a core part of stewardship leadership. When church finance is allowed to operate across this full spectrum, it becomes one of the most understood, underappreciated, and underutilized strengths of the local church. So here's the encouragement for every stewardship leader. Make room for church finance to function not just efficiently, but strategically. Because when finance is aligned with faith and vision, it becomes a powerful force for building trust and advancing the gospel. And it's important that we bring all these ideas into the real relational space where ministry actually happens. In our leadership teams. Stewardship is not a solo act. Trust is not built by individuals working in isolation. The real strength of church finance and stewardship leadership is realized when we work together, intentionally and collaboratively, as one body with a shared purpose. This next slide isn't a formula or a checklist, but it's a reflection of principles in action. These are some of the practical ways we can build trust and promote stewardship by working effectively in our leadership teams. And it starts with clear and regular communication. Not just updates, but real dialogue. Trust grows when everyone around the table understands what's happening financially and feels that they have a voice in the process. We also need to understand our church's vision. Finances should never float in isolation. They exist to support mission. Knowing the vision allows us to align resources and make better decisions together. Collaborate on budgeting. A budget created in isolation misses the opportunity for collective wisdom. When ministry leaders are part of the budgeting process, it strengthens ownership, planning, and trust. Be proactive in financial planning. Don't wait for a crisis. Faithful stewardship anticipates needs, identifies risks, and prepares wisely. Educate and empower others. Financial leadership includes helping others understand, It includes explaining reports, answering questions, mentoring new leaders, and all of this builds confidence and inclusion. Balance financial realities with vision. Leadership teams need to hold both, and what's possible now and what we're prayerfully working towards. Demonstrate transparency, and leadership credibility grows, especially when financial decisions are made openly with clarity and accountability. Stay informed on what your church is doing, what ministries are emerging, and what challenges need attention. Finance doesn't just follow, it supports and enables. So be a team player. Stewardship is best practiced in community, and that means showing up, being present in the meetings where vision is shaped, because it's in those spaces where prayer, purpose, and planning meet. That trust is built and mission takes root. So as we draw closer to the end of this presentation, this next slide reminds us of something deeply important, something that cuts to the heart of why we do what we do. The title says it, the crucial link. The words on the screen read, "Your role is not just about managing numbers, but about enabling ministry, making sure resources are aligned with the church's mission to serve, uplift, and spread the gospel." And this is where stewardship comes fully alive. Because at its best, financial leadership is not about counting coins, it's about moving the mission forward. And every time you prepare a report or receive a report, or you balance an account, process a reimbursement, or participate in a budget discussion, you are doing more than just administration. You are enabling ministry. When resources are aligned with purpose, the church becomes more than an organisation. It becomes a movement. And this is the crucial link between finance and mission, between policy and purpose. As treasurers, elders, stewardship leaders, pastors, we must always keep this connection in view. Because if we separate the numbers from the mission, we reduce our work to routine. But when we connect them, our roles become sacred. Think about it. The accurate budget report, it helps the department know what's possible. The clear financial update to the board, it empowers better decisions. That prompt reimbursement to your youth leader, it shows respect and support for their ministry. And when members see that their giving is translated into impact, when they see how their faithfulness is fueling evangelism, education, compassion, and community, their trust deepens and their commitment shows. This is why stewardship must never become detached from mission. Because when we see ourselves not just as managers of funds, but as mission enablers, everything changes. Let's never underestimate the spiritual weight of what we do. You are more than a financial officer. You are more than a leader in the church. You are a crucial link in the chain between generosity and gospel impact. And that makes your role not just important, but essential to the life and future of the church. So as we bring this webinar to a close, I want to thank you for your time, for your attention, and most importantly, for your commitment to the work of the church. We've covered a wide range of topics in this short webinar, from culture and controls and communication and collaboration, but at the heart of it is one consistent, powerful idea. Stewardship is the relationship of trust. A relationship between God and his people, between leaders and members, between vision and the resources that make vision possible. And church finance, when it is practiced with faithfulness, clarity, and mission in mind, becomes a vital channel for building that trust. Whether you serve as a pastor, an elder, a stewardship coordinator, director, or ministry leader, I want to leave you with 3 final thoughts. First, trust is built intentionally. It doesn't happen by accident. It grows through transparency, accountability, and consistent communication. Second, stewardship leadership is not just about managing resources, it's about nurturing confidence, enabling ministry, and creating space for people to give with joy and conviction. And third, the financial function of the church is not just operational, it's spiritual. When church finance is done well, with integrity, alignment, and grace, it becomes a testimony, a living witness to the faithfulness of God and the unity of His people. So let's continue working together to build that kind of trust, to lead with open hands and open hearts, and to remember that in all we do, we are stewards of something sacred.